Celtic are continuing to make progress in the pursuit of Wilfried Nancy. However, according to multiple sources, it will cost up to £2 million in order for Celtic to get him away from Columbus Crew. Welcome back, guys, to Fog Football. There hasn't really been much happening in the managerial market here for Celtic ever since the international break came on. I think a lot of us thought that Celtic would have a manager in by this point. It's now Wednesday, close to Thursday here. We've got 3 days left until Scottish football is back up and running, and still no Celtic manager in the dugout. Now, Martin O'Neill did come out on Monday, and he said that if nothing happens over the next few days, I will be happy to stay in the dugout for the following game, the next game against St Mirren. And it looks like it is going to be Martin O'Neill now, because that was a few days ago. Fast forward a few days later now, and there's still no movement. There's still no official news. No one has been appointed, so therefore it does look like Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney will remain in the dugout. And so far, you know what, they've done a pretty decent job, so I don't think it's a big concern. If Martin O'Neill has one more game, or two more games, or three more games, I don't think anybody would really be caring about that too much. I don't think anyone would be worrying about Martin O'Neill staying in the Celtic dugout. But according to multiple sources, and according to a French source, the newspaper L'Equipe, Reims, St Ennan and Rennes have all tried to get Wilfried Nancy from Columbus Crew over the past year, and they have basically been unsuccessful due to the compensation that Columbus Crew are wanting. Now, it is being announced at £2 million. That is the reported amount that Celtic would need to pay, which is quite a lot for a manager in Scottish football. It's not often Scottish clubs pay that kind of money. I say not often Scottish clubs. I don't think any Scottish club would ever have paid that outside of the top two. And even then, it normally doesn't happen. That's one of the big stumbling blocks when it comes to Celtic trying to approach McKenna of Ipswich. That deal was reportedly costing around the £5 million mark, and that pretty much was a no-go for Celtic. Now, yes, obviously £2 million is a lot less, but it's still a lot of money. It's still a lot of compensation money to bring someone to the club that is still relatively untested and hasn't exactly had a lot of success. Now, he's won a few things in North America, but again, that's just in the MLS. He's not really proven himself in multiple leagues in multiple countries like we've seen other managers do. I mean, some people are comparing him to Ange Postecoglou, but Ange Postecoglou had managed in Australia, he'd managed in Japan, I believe he even managed in Greece, I think, and he was the Australian national team manager, and he'd won trophies at multiple clubs. Now, yes, Wilfried Nancy has done that, but again, it's just been in America. Maybe the America system works for him. I'm personally not a big fan of the MLS or the North American football. I don't like the way they separate their leagues and their divisions, and I think I just don't like the way they do it. I think you can finish like in the top half of the table and still win the league, because they just go directly into a playoff, kind of similar to what they do in the NFL, where it's not necessarily like a points tally that wins you the league. You just have to be in the top positions in order to get into the playoffs after the postseason. So I'm not a big fan of that. It'll be a major culture shock for Wilfried Nancy when he goes to Celtic and he has to win every game. You know, it's not like that in America. You can win a game, lose a game, it's alright, but in Celtic you have to win every single game every single week. So I'm not convinced that he is the man, but he is the one that Celtic are pursuing at the moment, and he is the odds-on bookies' favourite. He's still 1-5 with the bookmakers. I checked yesterday and that has not changed. In fact, what we'll do is we'll check again right now, but I do believe that he is still 1-5, and it probably is going to be him for whatever reason. Though it's just taken quite a long time to get him in. I thought Celtic would have just tried to get it over the line. Yeah, he's still 1-5, so nothing has really changed there. It's just going to be a matter of Celtic trying to get this deal over the line and trying to agree the compensation fee with Columbus Crew. Now, perhaps maybe Celtic don't want to pay the $2 million. I would imagine that is what is taking so long. He also only has he only got 1 year remaining left on his contract at the MLS club. So, I mean, potentially 2 million is a bit too much. You know, I'm thinking that's a steep fee. Can we really blame Celtic? If Celtic try and reduce this, if Celtic try and pay less than the 1 million, the £2 million that Columbus Crew want, is that really Celtic penny pinching, or are they just trying to get the best deal for themselves? I would argue that is, I argue the latter. You know, I think Celtic should be trying to, obviously they don't want the deal to fall through, but if the guy's got 1 year left, £2 million does seem like a lot of money to pay just in compensation in order to get the guy. However, Nancy did hold talks with Hoops Chiefs over the weekend, and it is said that the talks were positive and that it's pretty much all but done, and that it looks like he will be the new Celtic manager. It's just a case of how much Celtic are going to pay for the compensation. So, I mean, at this point, maybe they should just get him in, but the way Celtic, I think, will look at it is, if we can get him a little bit cheaper and he has to wait one more game, then there's probably not a big deal with it. You know, that is probably not a big issue. They can just keep Martin O'Neill for another game, and if they can, is it worth it if they get Nancy for a bit less money and Martin O'Neill has to stay for one more match? Would that really be a disaster for Celtic? As long as Martin O'Neill wins that match, I don't think so. There's no guarantee that you bring Nancy in and he wins the match anyway. So, you know, especially with the international break being on as well, I don't think Celtic would have been in such a rush. Had there been no international break, maybe we would have seen more movement. Maybe Celtic would have been more eager and would have not stalled as much in this managerial search. But I do think that international break probably bought them some time. But yeah, it does look like Nancy, the 48-year-old, will be the next Celtic manager. It's just a case of how long it's going to take till he comes through the doors at Celtic Park, and how much Celtic are going to have to pay for him to get him away from Columbus Crew. So we'll see. But as for right now, I think it's a safe bet that Martin O'Neill will be the manager, at least for the game against St Mirren, and then who knows after that. Now, speaking of Celtic managers, it looks like Fulham are interested in possibly bringing in Brendan Rodgers, according to Football Insider 247.com, if Marco Silva cannot turn things around. Now, Fulham are currently 15th in the English Premier League. Their form isn't too great. We see managers get sacked left, right and centre in the Premier League, so it really wouldn't surprise me if Marco Silva doesn't last that much longer. It wouldn't surprise me if Fulham are looking for a new manager. But to be honest, it would surprise me if that new manager is Brendan Rodgers. I think it's wrong that Brendan Rodgers is being looked at as this like great manager that left Celtic with his head held high after success after success after success. The guy won 4 trophies out of 6. Is that good? Yes, absolutely. The guy made it past the league phase of the Champions League. Is that a decent campaign? Yes. Very close against Bayern Munich. Is that a great result? Yes. But that was last season. It's a new season, okay? We've moved on. And the reality is, Brendan Rodgers left Hearts. I mean, Brendan Rodgers left Celtic when he was 8 points behind Hearts. He wasn't sitting top of the league. He wasn't running away with things. You know, he wasn't on his way to winning a 3rd league title in a row. He was trailing the league leaders by 8 points. And he spit the dummy at the pram. And he's fucking left. He didn't like the transfer window back in the summer. He could have left then. But he didn't. He waited till he was 8 points behind Hearts. You know, it's a myth. People were pretending, oh, Brendan Rodgers, he had enough. The transfer window sucked and he showed the board. He put it to the Celtic board. He stood up for himself. He could have did that on the 2nd of September when he wasn't happy with the signings. He could have walked in. But no, Celtic were in a better position then. It's only when he fell 8 points behind Hearts, and in my opinion, he thought that he couldn't turn it around, and he's thought, it's better me leaving now because it's embarrassing as it is, at least I can claim that I didn't lose shit. Whereas if I stay and I do lose the league title to Hearts, then nobody's going to want to touch me. I'm going to be the laughing stock. I'm going to be the guy that's lost the title to someone outside the old firm for the first time in 40 years. So, Rodgers might think that he's smart for leaving when he did, but he went down in my estimation, and he'll just be known as the guy that got sacked by Stephen Presley. The guy that quit, the guy that couldn't hack it, the guy that didn't feel like he could claw back the gap. And Celtic can go on and win the league this year. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean that Rodgers won them the league. Celtic can go on and win the league, but it's got fuck all to do with Rodgers. Rodgers is the guy that quit. Rodgers is the guy that bailed out. He's the guy that left 8 points behind. So no matter what happens, in my eyes, Rodgers lost the league. And he can't change that. He was 8 points behind and he decided to leave. That can't be changed. That history will not be rewritten. Celtic can go on and win the league by 20 points this season. Doesn't mean shit. Rodgers still lost the league because when he left, Celtic were trailing by 8. And to be honest, it did not look like he was going to turn that around. So I'd be surprised if he walked into Fulham. I think if he left at the start of the season, then yes, you could make the case, absolutely. But I don't think people are actually acknowledging how poor the last few months of Rodgers' Celtic career. Even if you go back to last season, they had the St Johnstone game they lost, they were diabolical. The St Mirren game where they drew, they were shiting that. The Aberdeen Cup final, one of the worst cup finals that we've ever seen, started the season poorly. The 2 games against Kairat, you had over 3.5 hours of football, didn't score a single goal against Kairat, for God's sake, and then 8 points behind Hearts. So it really was piss poor for Brendan Rodgers, and I don't think that's worthy of walking into a job at Fulham Football Club. But here, if Fulham want him, they can have him. But I think Brendan Rodgers, I think he needs to rebuild his career. I do think the final 3 months, 4 months, whatever, 5 months, 6 months, I think it did a lot more damage to his reputation. His final little spell at Celtic. For me, the cup final was a poor one, and then they just didn't kick on the next season. Like I said, the Kairat games were shocking. The game against Dundee, shocking. Giving 8 points up to Hearts, shocking. So yeah, for me, Rodgers shouldn't get the Fulham job, and I certainly wouldn't have him on my shortlist, but Fulham can do whatever they want to do. Guys, let me know down below, do you agree? Do you think that Rodgers needs to rebuild, or do you think that Rodgers has got enough credit in the bank, not enough trophies at his time at Celtic that he can walk into a Premier League job no bother? Or do you think like the last 4 months, let's say, of his Celtic career have done his reputation some damage and now he needs to rebuild that? Let me know what you think down below in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, been Fog Football, thanks for watching and peace.